because the connection is always getting broken.
Yeah.
Can you check to see if it's properly focused?
Good.
Okay. Jai Supadikar Shishi Guru Gauranga Gandhi Shishi Radha Govinda Jiyo Ki Jai Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Jiyo Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Sudarshan Chakra Jiyo Ki Jai Jai Shri Gauri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai Shri Nrsimha Bhagavan Ki Jai Jai Nityalila Pravishto Vishnupad Paramahansa Astatara Sata Shri Srila A.C. Bhakti Ananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai Vaishnava Sarvabhaum Shri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Acharya Baladev Vijabhushan Prabhu Ki Jai Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Ki Jai Shri Narottam Srinivas Shyamananda Prabhu Trai Ki Jai Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Sada Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Srila Swarup Dev Subhadra Sudarshan Chakra Jiyo Ki Jai Jai Shri Jagannath Rath Yatra Ki Jai Jai Shri Gundicha Mandir Ki Jai Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Kshetra Dhama Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Tribhuvana Pavana Harinam Sankirtana Ki Jai Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tishe Namaha Nityanandam Namastubhyam Premananda Pradayane Kalo Kalamashanashaya Janava Pataye Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shivat Pranams, my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Parasata Shri Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. Then I'm offering my same Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Shri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Shridhar Goswami Maharaj. And that is the description of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dancing, his ecstatic dancing at the Rath Yatra festival. So we came up to the point yesterday of hearing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's own verses that he was singing and glorifying the mood of the gopis and how Radha and Krishna met together at Kurukshetra, and there they had their most amazing exchange, and how Krishna submitted himself to Srimati Radhika and the gopis. So the description after that, I read ahead. I was reading the rest of that chapter yesterday, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then came to a place called Balagandhi along the path in transcendental ecstatic moods. So it was at that time that Sri Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he had made an arrangement that the king would dress himself in regular Vaishnava clothing, not king dress, but Vaishnava clothing. And in that mood, absorption in Radha times, and feeling the ecstasy of Srimati Radharani's praying. And he was meditating upon the Ras Leela description in Srimad Bhagavatam. Internally, that's what he was thinking about. He was so deeply absorbed. So the king came there and very humbly approached with the permission of all the other Vaishnavas. First he went so much that this king, of course he didn't know that it was the king. He was not letting the king know. On another level, internally, he actually knew that it was the king, but he had given his mercy to the king, Maharaj Prataparudra, because he understood that he was a pure Vaishnava. And even though he was a king, now he had come in such a humble way. Also during the Rath Yatra festival, when Lord Jagannath, the king does that. The dynasty, the descendant from Maharaj Prataparudra, is still the king of Puri today, after 500 years. And he always comes, and it was on the video I was watching, how he comes up onto the chariot, and he's offering different articles like artik and everything, and he's circumambulating. And then at one point you see that as he's circumambulating, actually Swarup Damodar Goswami, of course, he could understand this. And Mahaprabhu actually gave this vision to the king. He granted him this mercy that he could also see how Mahaprabhu was dancing in 7 parties simultaneously. And another thing happened, as the description of Mahaprabhu's wild dancing and how he was moving so fast and sometimes dancing in a circle, and it was so fast. Gurudev used to describe that just like brand. It means like if you have a stick, a wooden stick, and you put it in the fire, and then it comes out and it's red. It's red from the heat of the fire. So if you take that stick, especially in the dark, and you wave it, then it looks like one circle, right? It's like an optical illusion. It looks like one circle. Mahaprabhu was moving so fast in his dancing that he appeared in that of Nityananda Prabhu there, and Mahaprabhu jumping very high. Now in this case, no one was there, and Mahaprabhu fell to the ground. But the king, he fell right in front of the king. And then the king immediately bent down to, in a very respectful way, to try to pick him up. And then suddenly Mahaprabhu came into external consciousness. And he said, "Oh, how cursed I am that I have been touched by a materialist." And the king immediately became frightened and, But then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya came up to the king and he said, "Don't worry. Actually, Mahaprabhu, he's very towards you. But he's only showing this for external purposes, to show example." So in this way, when the time came, the king came into the garden. And this will be the first time that he's directly being, especially alone with Mahaprabhu. Of course, his associates were surrounding, but they were a little bit distance away. You out. He was teaching his personal associates how to behave with Manu. Then Sarvabhauma continued, he said, "I shall submit your petition when there is an opportune moment. It will then be easy for you to come and meet the Lord." So after circumambulating Jagannath, then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went behind the car and began pushing it with his head. Just with his head. because the car would not move. And then the people all around began to chant the holy name of the Lord, Hari, Hari. And as the car began to move, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took his personal associates in front of the cars, which were occupied by Lord Balaram and Subhadra, the goddess of fortune. And greatly inspired, he then began to dance in front of them. After finishing the dance before Lord Baladev and Vrindavan, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees, they were dancing in front of the car. And Lord Jagannath, having stopped the car, he watched the dancing. It was customary that food be offered to the Lord at Viprashashana. That's the name of the place. Indeed, innumerable dishes of food were offered, and Lord Jagannath tasted each one. All kinds of devotees of Lord Jagannath, from neophytes to the most advanced, they offered their best cooked food to the Lord. These devotees included the king and his queens, his ministers and friends, and all other big and small residents of Jagannath Puri. All the visitors who had come from different countries to Jagannath Puri, as well as the local devotees, by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as he danced in front of Lord Jagannath. And in his prayer known as the Chaitanya Ashtakam, Srila Rupa Goswami has given a vivid description of the Lord's dancing before the car of Jagannath. So we have that in our songbook. Actually, Prabhupada is explaining that there are three different Chaitanya Ashtakams that were composed by Rupa Goswami. Number 1, 2, and 3. This is from the first one, and that's the one we have in our songbook. Huh? No. Rupa Goswami, that's Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. No, these are actual Ashtakams. I'll read the Sanskrit of this one verse from this Chaitanya Ashtakam. Radha Rudhasya Rad Adipadavi Nila Chalapader Pater Adapra Premormi Spurita Natanola. So anyone who hears this description of the car festival will attain Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He will also attain the elevated state by which he will have firm conviction in devotional service and love of Godhead. Now the last verse of every chapter is the same. Shri Rupa Raghunatha Pade Jar Ash Chaitanya Charitamritam Kohe Krishna Das. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, and always desiring their mercy, I, Krishna Das, narrate following in their footsteps. Jai Jagannath Dev Ki Jai, Jai Shishirada Govinda Ki Jai. So that's the end of the 13th chapter, which is the chapter describing Mahaprabhu's ecstatic dancing. Now we're going to the 14th chapter. So that's coming, I think, on our calendar. It's tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow. That's called Hera Panchami. Hera Panchami. There, at the festival known as Lakshmi Vijayotsava, Mahaprabhu and his personal devotees, he discussed the super excellent love of the gopis. Just by hearing about them, he became very pleased and he danced in great ecstatic love for the Lord. Jaya Jaya Gaura Chandra Sri Krishna Chaitanya Jaya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Danya. I'm going to switch to this. Gun, Jaya Shrota Gun, Jar Gora Pranadan. All glories to all the devotees, headed by Srivas Thakur. All glories to the readers who have taken Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as their life and soul. E Mata Prabhu Achem, Premer Aveshe, Heno Kale. He says sometimes members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, especially in the Western countries, they find it difficult to approach people to distribute books because people are unfamiliar with the traditional saffron robes of the devotees. The devotees have therefore inquired whether they can wear European and American dress before the general public. From the instructions given to King Prataparudra by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, we can understand that we may change our dress in any way to facilitate our service. When our members change their dress to meet the public or to introduce our books, they are not breaking the devotional principles. The real principle is to spread the Krishna consciousness movement, and if one has to change into regular Western dress for this purpose, there should be no objection. So, because I'm from that generation of the early devotees, we actually witnessed they began to distribute larger books, because up to that time we were mostly just distributing back to Godhead magazines, to the people who were standing and watching the kirtan party like that. And some small books, but it was rare that we were distributing any large books. But here on the West Coast, some devotees in the San Francisco temple and also Los Angeles temple was being started at that time. They began to take the books, a whole box of books, and they would go to in various parts of Los Angeles, Pasadena, different places where it's just a residential area. They would bring the whole box of books, put it down in front of the door, ring the doorbell. When the people came, they would present the books, Krishna books, very big, hardcover, and also Bhagavad Gitas, like that. And they began to actually sell these books, his sanction. But what he wanted was he wanted them to look like respectable Western persons. I mean, even in the 60s, when Srila Prabhupada was visiting London and different places, you can see photos of like Guru Das, who's wearing suit and tie, and he's with Prabhupada at some television or radio studio. He's accompanying Prabhupada. So, but he had tilak on. So Prabhupada said, you can dress in what will be, but you should wear tilak. And then what happened was the devotees, they started buying wigs. and they were buying long-haired wigs and wearing like hippie dress, blue jeans and this and that. And then Prabhupada heard about this and he said, no, I do not want that they will dress like hippies. So after that, then it activity and sanctioning it. So now, Maharaj Prataparudra was so humble that with folded hands he first took permission from all the devotees, and then with great courage he fell down and touched the lotus feet of the Lord. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu lay on the raised platform with his eyes closed in ecstatic love and emotion, the king very expertly began to massage his legs. The king began to recite verse. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you have given me invaluable gems, but I have nothing to give you in return.